We know what it's like when you have so many blankets, and we can thermoregulate. I can kick my foot out, I can push it down. The earth can't do that. So when we use the term blanket, it makes much more sense to people, and they're able to walk away with it and go, oh, I like blankets. Blankets aren't inherently bad things, but too much blanket is a bad thing.
That voice you just heard was Kait Birghenthal, and this is Dragonfly Conversations. Through this podcast, we highlight everyday people making a real difference in conservation and education. My name is Kevin Madison, and through my work with Project Dragonfly, I get to share their exciting stories. Today, Kait teaches us how to break the silence around climate change by finding a common language. Kait is a strategic communicator and conservationist who leads a national network of nearly 1,000 climate educators and also works with the world's largest marine mammal hospital. We talk about why metaphors matter and how a community of practice can literally turn a parking lot into paradise. Let's get into it. All right, Kait, welcome to the podcast.
So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I think climate change is so important, obviously, but how we talk about it, which is what you are all about. Like, how do we have these discussions and not just be silent about it? And how do we have discussions that are productive? So maybe just give
Exactly.
us a little orientation to NNOCCI as an
Mhm.
organization and your work with it and what you guys are doing in that realm.
Sure. So Anoki's been around for almost about 16 years now, and our work is to focus folks so they can make their climate conversations hopeful, solutions oriented, and civic minded. And we have just about 900 members that have gone through a multi-month training with us across 47 states. We're in just about 500 institutions, and we are actually also now in Canada and beyond. So our goal is teaching people to speak with the same voice about climate change. We want to be able to use the same terminology because it is its own language. And we know that people can't always define scientific terms and especially climate terms if they are not in this world. So we can take for granted the things that we know, and we are maybe not able to then access the people that we're talking to. So we help predominantly in formal science education centers, but people in all different respects. We had someone that was a host for a science channel show. We had somebody else that was a music writer. But then we also have people from the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. We have a number of dragonflies, which we're super
Mhm.
excited about, and just an amazing organization of people communicating on climate in a hopeful way and working together and making a community for that.
Yeah, 900 members. That's really impressive. And the geographic spread you were talking about.
Well, and beyond that, we know that conservatively, because of the reach of the organizations we're in, our work has been, interacted with or seen by tens of millions of people across the country because we know that even just zoos and aquariums have a massive reach because they're speaking with the public in all different ways. And people are coming to these areas with the mindset that these people are unbiased. They want to talk about an animal. They want to show you this cool, fish. So being able to have this conversation for them is really great. And we know that more people in the United States, about three-quarters of people in the United States, believe that climate change is currently happening, but only about a quarter talk about it or hear anybody they know talk about it in an average month. So we have the spiral of silence of people want to talk about it, they're afraid, but they don't know how to and they're not talking about it. So how do we break that spiral? And that's really what our work is rooted in, is really trying to have these conversations because we know that if we don't talk about something, we can't really make any progress.
Yeah, I like that term, the spiral of silence and the danger of silence, right? And it's a
Hmm.
topic that clearly has been politicized and, for many people it feels polarizing.
Good
And I guess
point.
I
It
should just say,
feels it.
yeah, yeah. So how do you say you are having this conversation with someone, like what maybe just a couple tips, simple things you all recommend for people to
I
open the
mean,
door?
I would say first off, don't be afraid of the conversation because again, so many people are worried. They want to talk about it. They don't know how to. So being able to have the bravery to just have that conversation is often so much less scary than people think it is. We scare ourselves into not talking. And what we don't realize is that we all share some common values. So if we can focus on how we are acting on climate to protect ourselves and the people and places and things we care about, that is going to reach somebody really well. If we come in with that doom and gloom, if we come in with the sky is falling, we're all gonna die, people tune out. I mean, I always refer to it as, at least here in the US, if you were around in the 90s, we had the ad for it was ASPCA or something, and it would be Sarah McLachlan, in the arms of the angel. And
Oh
immediately
yeah.
we all go to
Mm.
what's your mindset?
Oh, just sad, depressing, and the animals.
But then what can we do? You donate once, you make a recurring donation, you get an animal, you're still going to be really sad and turn off the screen or mute it when it comes on because it just breaks your heart and there's only so much you can do. So if we lead with crisis, if we lead with fear, people don't want to tune in. We have enough crisis, we have enough fear and terrible things going on. So we have to be able to align climate with things that are already happening, things that people need to be doing for part of their daily life. We can't make it compete for attention.
Yeah, it seems very challenging though, because it is such a kind of big, scary thing. It's global in reach, and I
100%.
I hear you on the terminology. I think years ago when I was in grad school, the term was global warming, and then it became more common to use climate change. Are there some specific terminology you all are recommending for people to sort of integrate into their lexicon and their discussion
Great
topics and themes
question.
with us?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, first of all, I appreciate that you mentioned from global warming to climate change. We recognize that the way we talk about climate is what NNOCCI is all about, is that we recognize how we have to strategically frame the conversation, right? So, first off, like you said, we're going to go to climate change, not global warming, because people think warming, it's lovely. I enjoy, I don't want to shovel snow. I don't want to do this. But we recognize that warming is not the only thing that happens, right? We've got increased storm severity as well as increased regularity of storms. We have wildfires, we have flooding, we have sea level rise, all these things. And so when we say warming, it can be very misunderstood. Secondly, people will often use the term greenhouse effect, and I can talk in a second about how we instead use the heat trapping blanket because, again, a greenhouse is productive. There's inherently nothing wrong with a greenhouse. So when
Hmm.
people hear greenhouse, they're like, okay, so maybe the plants will grow more? Like, what? Why are you
Right, it
upset
sounds
about
kind of
this?
nice. I would
Yeah,
love to be in a greenhouse right now.
I want to be in a greenhouse. I want it to be warm. Why would I be afraid of these things? So, really right sizing the terminology. And then the other thing is trying to go away from greenhouse gases. Same reason. It doesn't really tell us much, right? Like a gas exists in a greenhouse, okay. Instead, if we can use the term heat trapping gases, that makes it much clearer for people. It gives the mechanism of why that gas is a worry. But of course, we need to be able to give all those mechanisms for people to understand the gas at all. So, I would love to share a heat trapping blanket metaphor with you. I know we had kind of touched about wanting to do that. Is it cool if I go off, Kevin?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, it sounds kind of cozy, but also kind of like stifling a little bit, depending on your history with heat trapping blankets in
Well,
your life.
that's exactly it though, is that it's very salient. And that's what makes the metaphors we use, these tested explanatory metaphors that we developed with the Frameworks Institute, which is a sociolinguistics research company. They helped us understand that we know everybody knows a blanket, right? Our work was tested with, adult audiences, but it doesn't matter what age you are. If you can speak, you understand the concept of a blanket. We also know what it's like to have too much on us. We know what it's like when you have so many blankets, and we can thermoregulate. I can kick my foot out, I can push it down. The earth can't do that. So when we use the term blanket, it makes much more sense to people, and they're able to walk away with it and go, oh, I like blankets. Blankets aren't inherently bad things, but too much blanket is a bad thing. You know, the
So
general thought.
yes, and I am sort of ashamed to say that it was only in my early 40s that I learned the strategy of kicking your foot out in night to to save yourself from overheating. And I had some friends that were like, "Wait, what? How have you existed all this time and didn't know that?"
I
But I
love
love
that.
that metaphor that the earth, right, doesn't really have that ability to stick
Hmm.
its foot out, right? So that is, like you said, salient. It's very powerful metaphor. That's very cool.
Right, so that's the general, but we really dig into again those specific words. So we use these things called reframe cards, and what's really interesting about Noki, I mean, a number of things, but we talk about there's no such thing as plagiarism with us. Like these
Mm,
tools were developed in situ, use them as is, we know they work. So for the basic mechanisms of climate change, we use this heat trapping blanket. So, the story we're telling here is that when we burn fossil fuels for energy, like coal, oil, and methane gas, we're adding more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And this buildup acts like a blanket that traps heat around the world, which disrupts the climate, warming the land, air, and sea. So, in one sentence, I'm able to explain the mechanisms of climate change. And why that's especially important is that our research has shown people don't necessarily know what carbon dioxide is, and they
mm.
might be afraid to ask. So we have this video I'm happy to share. I don't know how you share with your audiences, but it's people being interviewed on the street and being asked what the mechanism, what carbon dioxide's role was in the environment. And they go off on thinking it's carbon monoxide, or if we breathe it, again, we breathe it, we die, and all these things that we know is not, or carbon dioxide is a good thing. Again, it's not a bad thing, but people don't know how to right size what it is or how the climate is changing. So being able to give them those mechanisms when we burn fossil fuels, so it's we're stepping through each of these pieces. So the atmosphere is like a blanket that surrounds the earth. This establishes the blanket metaphor early, makes sure it's understood as a metaphor, and it helps us translate the underlying science with fidelity. So someone can be like, again, salient, I get it. When
Yeah,
we then transition to burning fossil fuels, like coal, oil, and methane gas for energy, we are correcting any potential misconception that the problem is caused by a hole in the ozone layer, which people of my generation are like, okay, we've conflated the two, right? So we want to make it
totally.
very clear which one are we talking about? But it also reinforces how human activities lead to warming, which helps us facilitate solutions thinking. Because if we can't understand the mechanism, we can't look to solutions.
I've also noticed, teaching undergraduates and graduate level in university over the years, the conflation of ozone layer issues with greenhouse gases and climate change. And the only thing I really like about that is it opens a window to talk about how, with the ozone layer, that was an issue that was problematic as it was being degraded, but it is something that we actually have largely helped repair.
A hundred
So it's an
percent.
example of how humans can make this huge global change if we put the will behind it. So I think it's a huge success story.
A
I don't know if you
hundred
guys leverage
percent.
that at all.
Oh no, we do. We do. I mean, it's interesting because as we work with younger audiences, it's fascinating that they don't have the hole in the ozone layer in their zeitgeist. Like I've brought it up and they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. I didn't mean to concern you. It's everything's okay." So again, we don't know our audience's knowledge when we walk into the conversation. So we can't assume that they already have the correct information. So we can't get mad at someone for not knowing. So, coming in with that measured tone is really, really important. But from there, when we just establish that this blanket is getting thicker and it's, creating more heat, we understand those mechanisms, we can then say it leads to warming, which disrupts the climate. So this communicates that the warming is a problem. It's not equivalent to the pleasant warmth of a day that's a little sunnier than others. This is where we get to then, and this is where the big rubber meets the road. We then need to be able to put in this explanatory chain to say, for example, this extra heat results in. And this is where people get to, kind of color outside the lines. Are they talking about beluga whales? Are they talking about a blue morph butterfly? Are they talking about their local beach there's all different things that you can then plug it into, but you have the same mechanism to build off of. And then once we've now set up, we know what it is, we know how it's getting worse, but we know that the problem is the fossil fuels that we can stop burning. So that's the whole mechanism. It's it's really
In
easy
theory,
when you really, yeah,
because
fair, fair.
humans are humans are
Yeah.
tough. We keep making advances in renewables and in theory, and yeah, the consumption just keeps going up. All right, but you kind of segued a little bit there into sentinel species, and for so many people, obviously the polar bear, this emblematic species, and it's on this tiny ice floating in the and it's going to die and starve, right? But you also work with the Marine Mammal Center,
Mhm.
and through that work, I mean, how do you make this real to people in a way that doesn't sort of overload the doom and gloom we were talking about at the beginning and the fear of this animal just dying in the Sarah McLachlan
Yep.
moment?
Yep. Well, there's a few things at play there. First of all, I want to say that we know that crisis sells, even if it doesn't tune people in and make them make change. So you bring up a very good point there. How do we focus on these stories that end up in success? So at the Marine Mammal Center, we're the world's largest marine mammal hospital. We deal with seals of all types out of Sausalito, California, as well as sea lions and some otters. So we know that seals and sea lions eat the same food, breathe the same air, swim in the same waters, they use the same beaches. We're not that far apart. They are an amazing source of information because they're on the front lines of changes in the ocean and environment. So, in that sense, they are these sentinels for us. It's kind of like a canary in a coal mine. We're going to notice issues with them more quickly than we may now notice those issues with ourselves. So, they give us clues to the impact of climate change on the ocean and the shared home from warming water temperatures, shifting where the food sources are for seals, to warming temperatures leading to increased harmful algal blooms that can affect sea lions and people, to rising sea levels, shrinking breeding beaches for animals like the elephant seals and the endangered Hawaiian monk seal, which we also work with. We're the only organization that works with them. But at the center, we can see some of these impacts firsthand because we're getting patients in. So, for example, each winter we see northern elephant seals that are born along our coast. And by our, I mean Sausalito, California. These elephants born along the coast, but there's been stronger and more extreme storms. And so, coupled with sea level rise, which we know is happening because of the warming of the seas, so there's that expansion, we can see lots of baby elephant seals that are separated from their mothers prematurely as those waves get much farther up the beaches and sweeping young pups that can't swim yet out to sea. So that is a really salient concept of you come to the Marine Mammal Center, you can see this young elephant seal that's separated from their mom. And yes, they only spend a month with their mother when they're born, which is crazy in its own right. But in that month, if there's a major storm, that animal now needs every ounce of support to be able to survive. So, seeing more of these seals tells us that there is the shift. And what is the shift? We're seeing less of that breeding beach because of these storms, because of the rising sea
I
levels.
think I I think I saw some footage of, I don't know if it's exactly elephant seals, it might be that they end up having to kind of breed up on this like very rocky, almost like cliff kind of thing. Maybe because the beach isn't there, and then there's footage of them trying to get back down to the ocean and they're falling and
I
they're
think this
dying. I
might
don't
be
know.
walruses.
Oh, okay, that's walruses, huh?
Yeah, yeah, I
Okay.
think.
Has that always been the case, or is that also like climate
N no,
induced?
the spaces where their beaches would be widest. We're definitely seeing an increase in that sea level rise, and that means that yes, they have less space. Especially for an animal like a walrus, it's not exactly like they need like a tiny bit of space. Each of them requires a good bit of space,
Hmm.
and in general, the males can spar and things, but it like if they can't get back to the ocean, they're gonna find their best way to be able to get back. So it's one of those really salient in those negative way examples, but that type of story, if we are able to turn it from sadness into action and how we can be heroes in this story by helping reduce the amount of fossil fuels we're using and the heat trapping gases we're emitting, that helps somebody say, okay, I'm leaving today from the center. I've seen these elephant seals. I understand what's happening, but I can do something when I leave. And that is really where we are trying to change behavior and get people to focus on energy efficiency, energy shift, as well as really talking about it, because we know that in and of itself is a solution, like any other social justice movement, or even, like you said, the ozone layer, being able to get people talking about it and seeing their place in it, even for an animal that seems so far away, like a walrus, like an elephant seal. We're all connected.
Yeah, totally. And I think a lot of times people feel very alone and overwhelmed by these things. So I know
A
you
hundred
guys also,
percent.
focus on community building. So people feel like they can do something. They're joining a group. I mean, what do you have any research on that? Like the benefits of people being in shared community over this issue?
So we know that hope creates action, and then action leads to more hope, and it's a perpetual cycle. So there's a Margaret Mead quote that I love, and it says, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And that harkens back to we need each other and we need our communities. And so that's a central tenet with Noki. People don't always think of what a community can mean. A community is everything from your school to your child's school to your sports team to your neighborhood, your HOA, your faith organization, etc. We all are in various communities of varying sizes, and each of us has a role to play. We didn't get into climate change alone. We can't get out of it alone. Again, if people especially have this fear of talking about it, if you give them that space to talk about it, that's going to make it more comfortable for them. And that's going to make them, again, that hope is more likely to create action. In Noki specifically, with those 900 plus members I was talking about, we come from informal educators, predominantly informal science educators, that have been seeing and feeling the effects of climate change in at this point, a lot of us all of our lives. And so being able to find a community that not only wants to talk about it, but encourages you to talk about it, gives you the tools on how to do that, and then supports you if you're like, I drafted the signage for my organization and I'd love a set of eyes on it. You have that support. And it's really amazing because our membership, or one of our previous membership directors, who actually is a dragonfly,
Oh,
Cassie Klein,
yeah, oh
she
yeah.
often says that Noki is a group of people that really care about each other who happen to also really care about climate change.
Oh,
And
that's great. Yeah.
it's true. At the end of the day, some of my best friends are Noki people just because it feels like you find your niche. We found our group of people that care. They want to do better. They want to not feel alone. So we know that if we're able to even these centers of again, zoological aquarium, museum, that's also a community. They have the ability to activate their communities, both locally as well as their visitors. So we just have to consider how we are able to make change depending where we are and the group we're in.
Yeah. What a cool, safe place, I would think, for people to interact and share their passion for trying to make things better. I wonder though, I
100%.
mean, because it could be a little like you're preaching to the choir with these. Do you ever
Mm,
like role play or do something like, what if someone says is denying climate change? What if someone's really throwing some numbers in your face? Like, how do you deal with these sorts of things? Do you
great
have any
question.
recommendations for that?
Yeah, so what's really funny when you realize it, and there's certain things that as I've learned more about strategic framing, I sit there and I go, "Oh, I see it in every kind of communication, whether it's climate change or not." And one of the big ones is bridging and pivoting. So we often see this used by politicians, and we can use it too. Essentially, what it is you're not, if somebody asks you a question, it's not responding something else. You're acknowledging that you hear them. That's an interesting question. Then you make your bridging statement, and then you're able to answer the question that you wanted them to ask. And we kind of refer to it as a Jedi mind trick sometimes.
Mhm.
And so sometimes the question they're asking I'm trying to think of examples, but instead I can give you this. Once before I was officially with NNOCCI, but using NNOCCI tools, I was giving a presentation on horseshoe crabs. So I was talking about how the red knot, it's a bird. They come from Tierra del Fuego up north. They make the longest migration of any bird in the world. And on the way, they make one predominant stop along the Chesapeake Bay to fill up on horseshoe crab eggs. Now, we are seeing that the horseshoe crab nesting season is coming at a different time than the birds. And so the birds are not getting the essential nutrients they need to make the full journey. So I was sharing about this and I was talking about how, and we can be kind of subversive when we talk about climate change, which is also an interesting thought to people. You don't have to go stand on a stage and say, we're talking about climate change. Again, it connects to everything. So we have the ability to find those in points. But I remember this guy just kind of staring at me and eventually he goes, you're talking about climate change. It almost this sense of awe. But it allows you to have these really deep conversations with people because again, it's not coming and beating them over the head that you're gonna require them to buy an electric car. We also know that people are gonna take steps. We don't necessarily learn everything in one go. So while we may not get somebody to, you know, I'm gonna go speak with my representative. If we can get them to understand weather versus climate, that's a step in the right direction. If we can get them to understand the mechanisms of climate change, that's a step in the right direction. So I think people often look at it as an all or nothing, and that's not the case. We People need amalgamations of steps, and this is one of those situations. So you can't discredit yourself if you give
Yeah.
somebody more information than they came in with, right?
Yeah, and I always think it's interesting how people love talking about nature generally, like species and things. I mean, I'm a pollination biologist, and if I start talking about bees and ground nesting bees and cavity nesting bees, usually, I mean, some people will be like, that's a little too nerdy or whatever.
But
But
that's rare, right?
yeah, but a lot of people are interested just because they're kind of tired of talking about the same old thing, the politics of the day or the gripes, their typical gripes and things, or the weather. Um,
Yes.
so I think like giving an opportunity for people to think about the ecology of this world we live in, the synchronicity of species and their food sources and how they move and migrate. And these things are changing, right? With the
Hmm.
climate, right? So I think about polar bears, and I'm not, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not fully concerned that they will go extinct as a species, but I think their way of life that it was because they are an omnivorous, you know, kind of adaptable generalist species in some ways, I guess, not as adaptable as some bears. They can move into human settlements and more terrestrial and, start scavenging or what have you.
And
But it's a,
crossbreeding.
yeah. Oh,
We've
okay.
seen them
Yeah.
crossbreed with grizzlies. Actually, it's funny you bring up polar bears specifically. So I have a podcast that's specifically on ocean conservation and
Hmm.
really trying to make it palatable and fun for people. And like you said, people want to learn about these animals. They find it, interesting. So I've been able to bring a bunch of Noki friends on that not only are they sharing all the cool things, but then they're also able to use their Noki framing skills to talk about them. So we had a polar bear biologist on yesterday. And so to answer your question, I didn't know this until yesterday, but apparently there's three basically eco regions is what they refer to. And it's essentially different life strategies of three different groups of polar bears. So there's one species, just one species. There's no subspecies, but one group goes out with the ice and then has to swim back. They have to make the decision to swim back. A different group is on the shore all the time. And then there's a third group that is, I forget exactly, and I know we just discussed it, but in general, it shows us that the ones that have to go out on the ice and swim back, those are the ones that we're like, oh, they're gonna drown. But the
Right.
ones that are living along the western coast of the Hudson Bay, they're a pretty stable species, and they're actually seeing increases in that population.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we may see animals no longer in certain ranges. We may see some changes as, again, there's been, I forget the exact name they gave them. It's got a cute name, but some kind of portmanteau, but there have been crossbreeding situations between polar bears and grizzly bears. So, it's like you said, nature finds a way, but it's obviously on us to be able to support them in finding a way and not standing in their way.
Right.
And so we know that adaptation to climate change is important, but if we don't mitigate, if we don't start to, continue to shift from to renewable energy sources and continue to not talk about it, that's where we reach points that are much harder for us to come back from.
Right. And it's like the resilience of nature, it can be inspiring and it's also scary sometimes when you're a conservation organization. You don't want people to hear that sound clip of you talking about, oh, on the west side of the Hudson Bay, the polar bears are doing just fine. And
Exactly.
someone takes that to be like, oh, don't worry. But we're talking about the loss of this unique population with this huge, it's almost like culture, right? It's
Oh,
like this
100%.
animal culture. It makes me think
It's
of
not just the animal
monarchs.
culture, it's the
Yeah.
people there too. There
Yeah,
are like
that's true.
11 different
Mhm.
names at least from indigenous groups for polar bear. The
Oh,
Inuits alone have at least five that look at different life stages. So it's really interesting because it's not just a matter of what, us as a predominantly white society that has, been brought up in this, capital world. These people that have been there for thousands of years depend on these animals. They refer to them as like mythical spirit bearers that are bringing souls between worlds. So it's not just the loss of this beautiful species or a segment of the species. That entirely changes that cultural group's way of life. And
yeah.
we often don't think about the fact that groups that are being hit first and worst are the folks that are contributing the least to climate change emissions. So it's important to tell those stories at the same time because it's not just about the polar bear. It's not just about
Hmm.
the ice. It's about the people that also rely on them and have been working with them for generations.
Right. Yeah, that is such an important part. And seeing if you can leverage some of those cultural connections for communication of the importance of this topic. Yeah, I mentioned monarchs. I think they're kind of similar in terms of butterflies. We have the Western populations that are migratory, and most people think of as being endangered, but we it's actually a global species now, and it can be resident
Huh.
in some areas of the Caribbean. And so it's not in danger of going globally extinct as a species, but those populations that are migratory, which is super cool and unique and tied to those groves in Mexico, like that is very much in danger. So I think we're going to have to get, without losing people in the weeds, we kind of need to get a little more nuanced in our discussions and messaging, and hopefully people will follow and get excited. um,
Yeah, and again, I mentioned before those explanatory chains. In the butterfly example, that's a great example. Obviously, they're not staying put. There are many ecosystems along the way and places that rely on them for food or all kinds of things. And the loss of them there means that, we see cascading effects down the food web or up the food web because we're missing some key part of what has been there. So, it's systems thinking is so key. And I think to your point, people in ecology, biology do naturally think of those things, but we have to make sure we connect those dots for people that may not necessarily think that about those steps in between.
yeah, the cascades and the buffers and feedback loops. There's so many things you could
Hmm.
talk about, right? And as an ecologist, I start to get excited, but it almost feels wrong to get excited about such a serious issue. Maybe we need to hold both.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with being excited about science,
Yeah.
especially as it is informing us to do better,
Mhm.
is my thought. Data is data. Like we interpret it as we're going to interpret it, but data is never bad, right? Like we need it. We need to draw baselines. We need to see how things change. So it's important that we want to study these things and that we find them interesting because if no one does, no one's going to do anything, right?
Yeah, so we're getting towards time, but I want to ask you about the oceans because
Of
you
course.
know, in they often are framed as this like victim of global climate change and
Hmm.
certainly are being impacted in terms of acidification and other and temperature rise predominantly. But how do you see them actually benefiting or helping the world be resilient to our increased emissions? Are there ways you see some messages of hope with the oceans?
100%. I'm glad you asked that because again, we want to focus on that hope. So, two things really come to mind. One is that the ocean has and is really helping in the fight against climate change. The ocean is absorbing close to 90% of the excess heat in our atmosphere. I'll repeat that. Close to 90% of the heat
Wow.
is being absorbed by our ocean. So protecting some land ecosystems from even more dramatic changes at the moment because it is taking in so much. Secondly, animals in the ocean are also serving as ecosystem engineers. So, supporting the ocean is being able to take in those excess heat trapping gases like sea otters that have been shown due to their ability to keep urchin populations in check. That allows kelp forests and eel grasses to grow, which means that we're able to sequester more carbon dioxide. When the otters are gone, that means the sea urchins can go unchecked and they like to just nibble at the bottom of the kelp and eat that hold fast, and then the rest of it just floats away and it can't photosynthesize anymore. So it's really important for that. So in turn, those healthy ecosystems, when we do have these otters, we do have these systems like we're seeing in the Monterey Bay area, those healthy ecosystems are able to naturally sequester carbon dioxide. And the scale at which sea otters work is like taking millions of cars off the road each year. They're very efficient little guys.
Really? Wow.
Compared to kelp ecosystems without sea otters, which, we get these crazy overpopulations of urchins. The same can be said about whales. They have the ability to create a carbon pump in the ocean because they're essential in supporting phytoplankton growth. So you think about they take in the phytoplankton, which, we're getting more because of that increased productivity. So they're taking it in, but then they're also able to then sequester it because when they poop, it settles, slash, it also is eaten by other animals. So it drops that carbon dioxide to the ocean floor.
Mhm.
So obviously we depend on the ocean, but it depends on us. So when we protect the ocean, and again, it's doing great things, then we are preserving food sources that we all depend on, protecting the habitats that are crucial for the survival of marine life, as well as entire economies of countries and towns across the globe. So it really is just one shared ocean, and our future is something that we need to work towards focusing on keeping our ocean healthy together. We know that our ocean acts as the heart of our climate. So just like we want to be mindful about, our own heart's health, we want to be mindful of the ocean's health as its, larger role in so many of these key processes of our world.
I love so much of that. And I like the analogy or the metaphor of like the ocean is this connective piece for the globe in dealing with
Mm,
these big issues, everything like biodiversity issues, climate change issues, even
it's
like
most of our
political social
planet.
issues. It connects us, like you said. That is wonderful. Well, one of the last things I like to do in these, we have this thing because in the Dragonfly graduate programs, we do a lot of reflecting.
Love it.
So even though I know you didn't go through the program, but you're an honorary Dragonfly.
Well, thank
You're
you.
so I just want to ask you some reflections. Is there something that you, when you were younger or some point in your life when you just knew this was the direction you wanted to go with your career that kind of like sparked that for you?
That's a great question. I kind of have to say no because I was dolphin girl. I wanted to talk about, you know, Tursiops truncatus, my bottlenose friends in kindergarten, and people weren't as into that. So that's okay. I've been a vegetarian since I was 4. I've just always been a little funky. But it's been neat because as I got older, some of the people that used to make fun of me later were like, "Oh, we're really into the earth." I'm like, "I told you it's so cool." Um, in
You
terms
just
of
got there
community,
earlier.
though. Exactly. I was like, you'll get there. Just wait. When you're older, when you're grown. Little 8-year-old Kate. But the other thing that did, I think, was really impactful in terms of teaching me the power of community is when I was just about 3 years old. I'm actually hilariously from the University of Miami. So
Oh, okay.
the
Yep.
counter to Miami University.
Hmm.
And I lost my home to a hurricane, Hurricane Andrew. And that was such a grounding experience of seeing how community can come together and how people of all different walks of life and beliefs and all kinds of things were able to support each other. And that doesn't happen all the time. Unfortunately, we see people come together in times of grief a lot of the times, but why can't we continue to do that to avoid grief? So I think that was really key to me. But the ocean is always just, I feel like the ocean Lorax since I was a kid. I couldn't stop talking about it.
Speak for the trees, speak for the waves, maybe. I don't
I like
know.
it. Speak for the seas.
Okay. And is there something through your work with NNOCCI or the Marine Mammal Center that you are just so proud of? Like maybe a moment when you looked around at a group or you had achieved something and you were just like, wow, we're really doing something great here.
I mean, I'm lucky to say that there's a number of moments. We don't always get to together in person as Noki folks, and if we do, it's just, a handful of us. But there is something really magical about it that I can't understand or I can't explain. I can understand it, I can feel it, but to the point I made earlier, it's just people will come. I'm one of the first people that I get the message that it's like, we need these tools. Like we're concerned, we want hope. And it's amazing the number of times that I've been able to put on an hour-long presentation or see a colleague do it or whatever. And you can see, even across the screen, you can see people's mood change. You can see their face perk up. They get really excited in the chat. They're so grateful because we can provide hope. We can help them have hope. And being able to give anybody hope is, I mean, I would say it's worth its weight in gold, but I'm sure it's far more than that. So,
Mm.
being able to, at the end of the day, give people the keys to be that storyteller as well as be that hero that they want to be and share that heroism with everybody else. That's pretty cool. We don't get to do that often. So to be able to be like, I can actually do something is really incredible to be able to see and feel.
Yes. Wow. Well, I think that's a great thing to be a part of, and I hope anyone listening will check out NNOCCI and join up if this is calling to them.
Yeah.
Last thing. Oh, is there a particular website? Just Google
Yes,
NNOCCI.
yes,
Anything
yes.
specific? Okay.
Good question. So, we are the National Network for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation. So we are NNOCCI.org. If you're curious specifically about our trainings, it's /trainings. If you're specifically interested about the events, because we'll do webinars as well, some free webinars, /events. But there's a newsletter link at the bottom to sign up. They're free. I promise we only send one, maybe two a month. And it tells you all about the trainings we have coming up. It tells you about, we have an editorial section that shares really amazing stories of our colleagues and the things they're doing all across the country, from the first ever Rhode Island Youth Climate Conference that happened last year
Hmm.
to, we have somebody down in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, and they took a parking lot and they turned it into paradise. So the opposite of they have
Oh,
paradise, and yeah, so the Marine Discovery Center, they did some great work there. So it's really neat to be able to share these stories of hope. You're not going to get doom and gloom from us. You're only going to get that hope and excitement and tools for the future.
awesome. So important to see those examples, those creative examples, turning parking lot into paradise. I love that. I'm thinking of the song for that as
Oh,
well.
they played
Wow.
Joni Mitchell at the ribbon cutting and everything.
Nice.
They made a living shoreline out of a parking lot, and I was like, amazing. What an idea.
Well, Kate, thank you so much for joining today, talking with us, and also for all the work you and your colleagues are all doing for climate change understanding and hope.
Well,
Really
thank you.
appreciate it.
We very much appreciate our Dragonfly friends and always welcome more of you. So really just appreciate you giving us the platform to share about Noki today and just the amazing network. None of us are alone. We are all one great, amazing unit of community of practice.
Hi there, folks. Just one more thing before you head on out. If you have a moment, as I mentioned at the beginning, I would love to hear in what ways you are finding this podcast useful, how you listen, what you would like to hear more of, less of, etc. Please feel free to send me any and all feedback any ideas for guests, etc., to Kevin Madison at my email, which is mattiskc@miamioh.edu. That's spelled MATTESKC @miamioh.edu. Thanks again for listening. Have a great day.